What if the greatest ancient empire wasn't built by grand emperors, but by the sweat and genius of everyday people? We're diving into the untold story of the Inca commoners, unsung heroes who engineered an astonishing 25,000-mile road network through the brutal Andes. Prepare to be amazed by the practical brilliance that truly connected ancient worlds. As the world dims, your eyelids grow heavy, and the day's worries begin to fade. But tonight, as you cross the threshold into sleep, imagine a subtle shift. Instead of your own familiar room, you find yourself gazing through unfamiliar eyes. You're not dreaming your life, but theirs. You witness their sunrise, their first challenge, the quiet rhythm of their world unfolding. How different could their path have been? What choices might have altered their destiny? Join us tonight as we step into their footsteps and explore the vivid tapestry of a life reimagined. Imagine that the wind howled, an invisible sculptor carving the sharp edges of the Andean peaks into an even more formidable silhouette against the bruised twilight sky. Below, clinging precariously to the sheer face of a mountain, I, a nameless observer in a sea of nameless faces, chipped away at the stubborn rock. My muscles screamed, a symphony of aches and strains that had become as familiar as the chill in the air. We weren't emperors, clad in gold and commanding legions. We were the mortar holding the empire together, the unacknowledged architects of its endurance, the builders of the Capac Nan, the royal road. A little more to the left, Mateo called a voice, raspy from dust and exertion. I shifted my weight, the rough spun tunic scratching my skin. Mateo, his face a roadmap of sun-baked wrinkles, grunted his assent and pried a chunk of granite free with his crude iron lever. His movements were economical, born of generations of working the earth, of coaxing sustenance from unforgiving soil. Now that same ingrained knowledge, that practical hands-on genius, was being channeled into something far grander, something that would bind these disparate, often hostile, lands into a single pulsing entity. The challenge wasn't just the rock. It was the terrain. I'd seen it all. I'd helped clear the path through the Amazonian basin where the air hung thick and wet, buzzing with unseen life, and the earth itself seemed to swallow every effort. We'd hacked through emerald swaths of jungle, our machetes singing a desperate song against the relentless green. The humidity clung to us like a second skin, our sweat mingling with the incessant drip of moisture from the canopy. Every fallen tree was a hurdle, every tangle of vines a testament to nature's fierce possessiveness. We learned to read the subtle signs of the forest, to avoid the venomous bite of a serpent disguised as a fallen branch, to find the dry ground amidst the perpetual damp. We carried our own supplies, dried meat and maize, rationed with the precision of seasoned campaigners, for the days when the jungle offered no bounty. Then there were the ravines, vast chasms that yawned open like the mouths of hungry gods. We didn't have the luxury of emperors with elaborate plans. We had rope, woven from tough alpaca wool, and an unshakable trust in our comrades. I remembered one particularly brutal crossing somewhere in the highlands of Peru, a chasm hundreds of feet deep that seemed to mock our ambition. Our foreman, a man named Inti, whose eyes held the wisdom of the mountains themselves, directed the operation. Strong men, their backs broad as oxen, anchored the ropes while others, lighter and more agile, rappelled down. We carried the heavier stones, the carefully shaped paving blocks, the timber for rudimentary bridges, piece by painstaking piece. The wind would snatch at us, threatening to send us plummeting into the abyss, but we held firm. Our fingers were raw, our shoulders burning, but the road had to continue. We built suspension bridges from ichu grass, intricate woven marvels that swayed precariously in the wind, yet carried the weight of messengers, llamas laden with goods, and eventually the emperor's will. Each knot was tied with deliberate care, each strand tested for strength. This wasn't abstract engineering. It was survival built into the very fabric of the path. The mountains. Oh, the mountains. They were our greatest adversary and our most profound inspiration. Climbing them was an act of faith. At altitudes where the air thinned and every breath was a conscious effort, we carved our way through. We didn't simply follow the contours. We dictated them. Where a sheer cliff face blocked our passage, we didn't turn back. We built staircases, thousands of them. Each step a small victory against gravity. We drilled holes, hammered in wedges, and chipped away for days, weeks, months. Our hands bled, calloused and torn. Our lungs burned with thin, icy air. We learned to read the weather, to seek shelter in shallow caves when the snows descended, to wait out the violent thunderstorms that ripped across the peaks. We learned to carry our tools, our meager food, and our own body weight up in climbs that would make a seasoned climber shudder. The problem-solving was relentless, born of necessity and an intimate understanding of our materials. If the ground was unstable, we drove in sturdy wooden stakes, bracing the earth with layers of carefully placed stones. If a stream threatened to flood our path, we dug drainage channels, diverting the water with a precision that would make any modern engineer proud. We didn't have fancy surveying equipment. We used simple tools, plumb bobs to ensure verticality, knotted ropes to measure distances, and the keen eyes of men who had spent their lives observing the land. We understood the properties of stone, how it eroded, how it settled, how to select the best pieces for each part of the road. We learned to work with the natural landscape, not against it, to find the most efficient routes, the safest crossings, the most sustainable methods. I paused, wiping sweat from my brow with the back of my hand. The sunset was painting the sky in fiery hues, a breathtaking spectacle that we, the builders, rarely had the time to truly appreciate. But even in our weariness, there was a quiet pride. We weren't just digging ditches and moving rocks. We were connecting communities, facilitating trade, allowing for the swift movement of armies to quell rebellions, and enabling the emissaries of the Sapa Inca to reach the furthest corners of his vast empire. This road was more than just a physical path. It was the nervous system of an empire, a lifeline pulsing with the energy of its people. Think of the logistics alone. Imagine the sheer, raw manpower. No trucks, no bulldozers, no cranes, just human muscle, human ingenuity, and an unwavering commitment to the task. We organized ourselves into teams, each with a specific role. Quarrymen extracted the stone, their hammers echoing across the valleys. Carriers, their backs bowed under immense loads, transported the materials. Pavers, their hands roughened and expert, laid the stones with meticulous care. Overseers like Inti guided our efforts, their voices a constant hum of instruction and encouragement. We worked from dawn till dusk, our lives dictated by the sun and the demands of the road. We learned to adapt. When we encountered a stretch of terrain that resisted our efforts, we didn't give up. We brainstormed. We experimented. We pooled our collective knowledge. Perhaps a different type of stone was needed, one that was more easily shaped or more stable in that particular soil. Perhaps a different angle of incline was required. These weren't decisions handed down from on high. They were born from the sweat of our brows and the grit in our teeth. We were the constant problem solvers, the innovators who saw a chasm and envisioned a bridge, a mountain, and saw a staircase. The Sapa Inca, in his gilded litter, might have been the symbol of our empire, the apex of our society. But we, the commoners, were its foundation. We were the ones who bled, who toiled, who endured the biting winds and the scorching sun. We were the ones who faced down the wildlands and bent them to our will, not through brute force alone, but through sheer, unadulterated cleverness. As the first stars began to prick the darkening sky, I looked back at the section of road we had completed that day. It wasn't perfect. It was scarred by the effort, marked by the imperfections of human hands. It was strong. It was functional, and it was a testament to what ordinary people, united by a common purpose, could achieve. The history books might focus on the emperors and their decrees, but I knew the real story, the story of the commoner's challenge, the story of an empire built not just by decree, but by the tireless sweat and the extraordinary everyday genius of people like me, chipping away at the world, one stone at a time. And as I tightened the straps of my sandals, preparing for another day's labor, I felt a swell of a different kind of pride. The quiet, unacknowledged pride of creation, of connection, of building something that would, in its own way, outlast us all. Now imagine, if you will, standing at the precipice of a ravine, a dizzying vertical drop that would send most modern engineers into a cold sweat. Around you, the Andes rear up like petrified giants, their peaks clawing at a sky so intensely blue it feels painted. You aren't an emperor, surveying your domain from afar. You are a commoner, your hands calloused, your back aching, a vital cog in the immense machine that is shaping the Capac Nan, the Inca road system. We're not talking about grand monuments built by enslaved masses, but an intricate network woven by ingenuity, practical brilliance, and a profound understanding of the land. Forget the romanticized notion of brute force alone. The true marvel lay in the everyday builder, the Hatun Runa, common people who, with knowledge passed down through generations, transformed an untamed landscape into an organized lifeline. Their solutions weren't just functional. They were often elegant, resilient, and deeply connected to the environment around them. Take, for instance, the very foundation of these roads, dry stone masonry. You've probably seen pictures, perfectly fitted stones, no mortar in sight, standing strong millennia later. But to truly grasp its genius, you need to understand why it was employed. The Andes are a seismic beast, prone to violent tremors that would shatter rigid, mortared structures. The Inca builders, generations before plate tectonics were even a whisper, knew this implicitly. Their solution was brilliantly simple: flexibility. Each stone, often weighing hundreds of pounds, was meticulously shaped and interlocked with its neighbors, creating a wall or a road surface that could move with the earth. When an earthquake struck, the individual stones would shift, rubbing against each other, absorbing the shock, and then settling back into place. No cracking, no crumbling, You'd witness a team of skilled masons, their eyes scanning a pile of raw boulders, choosing each one with an almost intuitive understanding of its potential. Then, with a series of heavy stone hammers, dense river stones or basalt, they'd begin the arduous process of shaping. It wasn't about perfectly smooth surfaces, but perfectly fitting angles. One man might be hammering a corner, sending sparks flying, while another would be running his hand over the nascent edge of a stone, feeling for imperfections. A smaller, finer-grained stone, perhaps one of granite or diorite, would be used as a chisel, struck by a larger hammer to create precise cuts and angles. They'd use simple plumb lines, weighted stones on ropes, to ensure verticality, and water-filled troughs, or carefully leveled lines of string to achieve horizontal precision. This meticulous stone fitting led directly to another critical technique: precise grading. The Kapaknan wasn't just a random path. It was a carefully engineered system designed to manage traffic, drainage, and erosion across wildly varied topography. Where the terrain was relatively flat, the road might be a wide, gently crowned earthen path, flanked by low stone walls. But in steeper sections, the ingenuity shone brightest. Staircases, beautifully laid with deep, wide steps of flagstone, would ascend cliffsides. These weren't hurried scrambles. They were engineered for stability and human comfort, often wide enough for several people abreast, sometimes even for llamas. More impressively, the builders understood the destructive power of water. On mountain slopes, they'd construct elaborate drainage systems. Stone-lined channels, often running parallel to the road or crossing it at strategic intervals, would divert rainwater, preventing it from eroding the road surface. You'd see sections of road that were slightly sloped towards these channels, a subtle camber designed to shed water efficiently. This wasn't guesswork. It was a profound empirical understanding of hydrology, born from observing countless seasons of rain and runoff. They were, in essence, sculpting the land to their will, not fighting it. Then, the materials? Always local. The Inca builders were masters of resourcefulness. Their construction methods, an intimate dialogue with the immediate environment. In the high altitudes, where stone was plentiful, the roads were overwhelmingly stone-paved, running over meticulously terraced mountainsides. Where the land was softer, the bedrock too deep, they'd build compacted earth roads, sometimes reinforced with layers of gravel and clay, and edged with low stone walls to prevent erosion. Descending into the warmer, wetter valleys, where adobe was common, you might find sections of road built from sun-dried bricks, often elevated on causeways to navigate marshy ground. Along the Pacific coast, where wood was scarce but reeds abundant, they utilized giant totora reeds, weaving them into buoyant platforms for crossing lagoons, or compacting them with earth to build elevated paths through sandy stretches. In the lower cloud forest regions, where dense vegetation presented a new challenge, paths might be carved directly into the living rock face, sometimes even tunneling through it in astonishing feats of manual excavation. Each material, each challenge, sparked a different, equally brilliant solution. But perhaps the most breathtaking displays of their engineering prowess were the bridges across challenging waterways. As you approach a roaring mountain river, swollen with glacial melt, you'd realize the sheer audacity of connecting an empire across such divides. Here, simple stone culverts wouldn't suffice, and massive timber spans were often impossible due to lack of suitable trees or the sheer span required. This is where the legendary Inca suspension bridges come into play. Picture yourself watching them being built. The raw material is ichu grass, a tough, fibrous puna grass that grows in abundance at high altitudes. For months, Communities would gather and process this grass, twisting it into thousands of individual braids. These braids, once finished, would then be woven into progressively thicker ropes, first finger thick, then wrist thick, then ropes as thick as a man's torso. It was a communal effort, a rhythmic chant accompanying the strenuous work of spinning. To span a chasm, middle laborers, men performing their communal service, would first send a lightweight rope across the gorge, perhaps using a sling or even by a brave swimmer carrying it in a wicker basket. This initial line would then be used to pull progressively thicker ropes across until the 4 or 5 main load-bearing cables were in place, anchored into massive stone abutments on either side. These abutments weren't just piles of rocks, they were precisely constructed, often with large, deeply set stones that mimicked the dry stone masonry of the roads, providing immense earthquake-resistant anchorage. Once the main cables were secured, a wooden walkway would be laid across them, held in place by 2 handrail cables, also woven from ichu. The sheer strength of these bridges, some spanning over 60 meters, was astounding. Their flexibility, much like the dry stone masonry, allowed them to sway with strong winds or even minor seismic activity, rather than snapping. They weren't permanent. Every year, sometimes every 2 years, the communities responsible for that section of the road would gather for Inca, communal work, dismantling the old, worn ropes and weaving a brand new bridge. It was an act of constant renewal, a living testament to their incredible skill and dedication. For wider, slower rivers, you might encounter pontoon bridges, where rafts made of reeds or lightweight wood were lashed together and anchored, supporting a wooden walkway. For smaller streams and gullies, stone slab bridges or carefully constructed culverts allowed the road to maintain its grade without interruption. The tools for these feats were surprisingly rudimentary by modern standards, yet wielded with extraordinary skill. Aside from the aforementioned stone hammers and chisels, digging sticks, the tala, wooden levers, and simple measuring ropes were common. The most valuable tools, however, were keen eyes, strong backs, and an unparalleled understanding of load distribution, tensile strength, and the behavior of materials. Their engineering wasn't based on abstract equations, but on generations of empirical knowledge, observation, and relentless experimentation. As you stand, surveying the vast network of roads stretching into the hazy distance, the true genius becomes clear. This wasn't just a road. It was an artery of an empire, a testament to the ingenuity of the commoner. It spoke of their capacity to adapt, to innovate, and to collaborate on a scale that defies imagination. It was beyond stone. It was the triumph of human intellect and perseverance, painstakingly woven into the very fabric of the forbidding Andes. You realize that you aren't just an observer. You are connected, through the very ground beneath your feet, to a legacy of practical brilliance that continues to inspire awe. Now, let's imagine that you are another engineer, building this road. The biting wind whipped at your llama wool poncho, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant, snow-capped peaks. Before you, the Capac Nan, the great Inca road, snaked its way up the impossibly steep mountainside, a testament to human will carved from stone and sweat. You weren't an emperor, nor a general. You were simply you, a runa from a mountain ilu, tasked with carrying a load of dried aluco to the next tampu, a day's arduous trek away. Most chronicles sang of the Sapa Inca, his armies, and his gold. But as you placed one worn ojota-clad foot in front of the other, you knew the true pulse of this empire thrummed not in palaces, but on this living network beneath your feet, connecting people like you. These roads weren't just imperial arteries for tribute and conquest. They were the very sinews of daily life for the common people. For your Ailu, isolated by rugged terrain, the Capac Nan was a lifeline. It meant that should the harsh highland winter claim too much of the potato crop, Quipu Kamayuks in a distant valley, having received their own local harvest reports via the network, could coordinate the movement of surplus maize or quinoa to prevent famine. Your communal work, the mita, often involved not just farming or military service, but also the meticulous upkeep of these very roads, an act that felt less like imperial decree and more like self-preservation. It was our path, ensuring our access to the fertile valley floors in planting season, or the high pastures for grazing llamas and alpacas. Without it, the vast Inca society would splinter into disconnected, vulnerable fragments. We relied on it to bring the Curacas' annual pronouncements, to summon healers from other villages, or to move entire ayllus for resettlement or specialized labor, like mining obsidian or harvesting coca leaf. The road was a living map of our collective existence, telling us where we were in relation to everything else. As you navigated a particularly narrow ledge, a flash of white and a blur of motion startled you. A chasqui. He was a young man, barely older than yourself, his lean frame radiating an almost supernatural endurance. His hair was bound tight, a white, feathered headband distinguishing him. Slung over his shoulder was a small patutu, conch shell trumpet, and a quipu, a complex series of knotted cords that represented a message, a meticulously organized tapestry of information. He didn't slow, didn't break stride, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon, toward the next tampu where another chasqui would already be preparing to receive his message. The sound of his pututu echoed just as he passed, a clear, sharp call announcing his imminent arrival. You watched him go, a fleeting specter of speed, and felt a familiar surge of awe. These runners were the very nervous system of the empire. They weren't just messengers. They were the embodiment of imperial efficiency and communication. From Cuzco, critical news could reach the far-flung edges of the empire, from the high plains of present-day Bolivia to the coastal deserts of Ecuador, in a matter of days. A message from the Sapa Inca in Cusco might reach the coast, nearly 500 kilometers away, in just 3 days, faster than any other pre-industrial messenger system known to man. It was often said that the Inca could enjoy fresh fish from the Pacific in Cuzco within a day of its catch, carried by relays of these tireless runners. But the chasqui carried more than just imperial decrees or fish. While the quipu was primarily a tool for official record-keeping, census data, tribute counts, inventory of granaries, the runners also carried oral messages, news of a particularly successful harvest in a distant region, a potential threat from an unaligned tribe, or even the news of a new imperial decree regarding meat-a-labor rotation, traveled at breathtaking speeds. For commoners, this meant a degree of certainty. You often heard rumors, amplified and distorted by local gossip, but a chasqui brought verifiable information. A Curaca in your Ailu might consult the local Quipu Kamayuk after a chasqui's visit to understand the true impact of a new policy, allowing our community to prepare, adapt, or even collectively voice concerns through the proper channels. It fostered a sense of being connected, of belonging to a larger, unified whole, even if that whole felt impossibly distant. Beyond mere communication, the Capacnan was the grand marketplace of the Andes, a silent facilitator of trade and cultural exchange that permeated every aspect of non-elite life. You yourself were bearing a luco, but on your journey back you hoped to barter for some coastal feathers for your sister's weaving, or perhaps some finely ground salt from the lower valleys. Your Ailu specialized in robust alpaca wool and high-altitude root crops, but we needed maize from warmer climes, pottery fired by specialists in a different valley, and the vibrant dyes extracted from cochineal insects found far to the north. These goods flowed along the Capacnan, not just as imperial tribute, but through the daily transactions of ordinary people. Merchants, often traveling with small caravans of llamas, specialized in moving goods between ecological zones, connecting the seafood of the coast with the potatoes of the highlands, the chicha of the valleys with the rare minerals of the mountains. You'd heard stories from other travelers at the tambos, tales of new pottery styles emerging from the Callao region, shared agricultural techniques for terracing defying erosion, or even new weaving patterns, inspired by designs seen hundreds of kilometers away. The roads allowed for marriages between different eyelids, strengthening alliances and weaving a richer tapestry of kinship and culture. Festivals, once localized affairs, could draw participants from wider areas, leading to the exchange of songs, dances, and religious practices. A traveling shaman from a coastal community might bring different healing herbs and rituals to your mountain elu, enriching your spiritual life. The Kapaknan, therefore, was more than a physical path. It was a conduit for the very ideas and innovations that allowed Inca society, from the humblest farmer to the highest priest, to flourish and evolve. Your journey continued. The weight in your kalapa, backpack, a steady presence. The sun was beginning its descent, casting long, dramatic shadows across the peaks. You imagined the countless footsteps that had worn these stones smooth over generations. Farmers, artisans, soldiers, priests, and chasqui, all bound by the invisible threads of a shared path. This network didn't just move goods and messages. It moved people's lives, shaping their understanding of the world, connecting their isolated existence to a grand, improbable empire that stretched further than the eye could see. And as you finally spotted the smoke rising from the next tampu, you felt not just the ache in your legs, but the profound, quiet pride of being a part of something so enduringly magnificent. Picture yourself standing on a sun-baked hillside millennia ago. The sun, a relentless eye in the cerulean Andean sky, beats down on your neck as you stand on the precipice, gravel crunching underfoot. Below, a ribbon of stone, meticulously laid and painstakingly leveled, snakes its way across the rugged terrain, defying gravity and logic. This isn't the grand imperial vision you often hear about. It's the stark, vivid reality of human hands carving an empire out of rock and earth. You're not an emperor here. You're an observer, a shadow, moving among those who built this world. Piece by arduous piece. The concept of Mida, often misunderstood as brutal, forced conscription, truly unfolds before you as something far more nuanced, deeply embedded in the very social fabric of the Andean world. It wasn't merely an imperial demand levied from distant Cusco. It was a communal obligation, an extension of the deep-seated principle of reciprocity that governed every aspect of Inca life. Imagine your own village, your ailu, a tight-knit web of kin and neighbors, tasked with weaving a segment of this vast Kapaknan, the magnificent royal road. You watch as the Curaca, the local leader, a man whose face is etched with the lines of generations spent under this same sun, addresses the gathered community. There's no fear in their eyes, no downtrodden resignation. Instead, you sense a quiet determination, a shared purpose. This stretch of road, winding around the treacherous slopes above their potato fields, through the pass that leads to the trading hub in the next valley. This is their responsibility. It will carry messengers, state goods, and crucially, it will connect them to the wider world, ensuring their own access to vital resources not found in their specific ecological niche. The organization is breathtaking in its simplicity and efficiency. It's not a single army of laborers toiling endlessly, but a rotational system. Today it might be the able-bodied men and women of the Ailu of Chinchero who are laying the foundation stones of a terraced roadway. Next month, it will be the turn of a neighboring Ailu, allowing the first group to return to their fields, their herds, their families. This rotation ensures that no one community is overburdened and that agricultural cycles, the very bedrock of their survival, remain unbroken. Ingenuity blooms from necessity. You see no metal tools beyond bronze chisels, Yet the precision with which the stones are split and fitted is astonishing. These aren't just brute laborers. They are engineers and artisans by inheritance. They understand water flow, how to channel torrential Andean rains away from the roadbed, how to create culverts that prevent erosion. They survey the land with an innate understanding of topography, choosing the path of least resistance, or, when necessary, designing a switchback so elegant it seems to have grown organically from the rock face. Observe the team, grappling with a particularly challenging section, a sheer cliff face, requiring a retaining wall. There are no imperial overseers with whips. Instead, elders guide younger men and women, demonstrating techniques passed down through countless generations. They select stones, not just for strength, but for how they interlock, creating a flexible yet unyielding structure. They use ropes woven from llama and alpaca wool, and simple levers of wood, their collective strength amplified by a deep understanding of physics, albeit an unwritten, practical one. The air is filled with rhythmic chants, not of weariness, but of coordination, of shared effort, a pulse that binds their individual endeavors into a single cohesive force. This communal effort fosters an undeniable sense of local ownership. This isn't the Emperor's Road. Not truly. This is their section of the Kapak Nan. They know every curve, every dip, every carefully placed stone. They are the ones who will maintain it, who will clear it after rock slides, who will rebuild it after flash floods. There's a quiet pride in watching a runner, a chasqui, speed across a perfectly paved stretch, carrying news or goods to Cusco. It's a validation of their collective effort, a testament to their Ailu's contribution to the greater society. But what truly motivates them? It's more than just avoiding imperial displeasure. For one, the practical benefits are immediate and tangible. A well-maintained road means easier access to the diverse ecological zones of the Andes. Their own potatoes might thrive at high altitudes, but the maize they need for feasts and sustenance grows in warmer valleys. The road facilitates this vital exchange, bolstering food security and diversifying their diet. It provides access to medicinal plants from distant cloud forests, to salt beds in arid regions, to precious feathers from the jungle lowlands. Beyond the purely utilitarian, there's a powerful social incentive. Fulfilling their mita obligation with skill and dedication brings prestige to the Ailu. It reinforces their standing within the broader Inca state. After a particularly arduous section is completed, you might witness a small feast, organized by the Curaca with resources provided in part by the state. Chicha beer, flowing freely, music, and communal dancing. This is the state's reciprocal gesture, reinforcing the social contract. It's not just payment in kind, but recognition, celebration, and the strengthening of community bonds. There's also a spiritual dimension. The Andes are alive with Apus, powerful mountain spirits, and Pachamama, the Earth Mother. To build a road that respects the land, that flows with its contours rather than violently imposing upon it, is an act of reverence. Each stone laid, each terrace carved, is a prayer, a way of honoring the divine forces that govern their world. Their labor is a communion with the land, transforming it into a conduit for connection, life, and empire. As you trek further along this incredible network, you begin to understand. The Inca roads were not merely engineering marvels, born of imperial decree. They were arteries woven from the very social fabric of a civilization, fueled by communal effort, honed by generations of ingenuity, and sustained by a profound web of reciprocal obligations, practical benefits, and deep-seated pride. It was an act of co-creation, where every commoner, stone by painstaking stone, became an architect of their own interconnected world. You thought the Inca Empire was a testament to grand vision, a monolithic power etched into the very mountains. But as you stood, imaginarily, alongside those long-lost commoners, feeling the grit of igneous rock under your bare hands, the burning sun on your neck, you understood something deeper. It wasn't the emperor's decree that truly sculpted the Capac Nan, but the whisper of countless ordinary people, their hands raw, their backs aching, their minds focused on the next stone. Their practical brilliance, born of necessity and intimate knowledge of the land, wove an intricate network of communication and control that unified a vast, challenging terrain, not through sheer force, but through ingenious adaptation. Centuries later, the decree is gone, the empire a memory, but the whispers remain, carried on the Andean wind, echoing in the footsteps of those who still tread these ancient paths. Today, as you traverse the actual Andes, not in a hallucination of the past, but in the buzzing reality of the present, the contrast is stark, yet the connection's profound. Modern Peru, like many developing nations, grapples with the monumental task of infrastructural development. Concrete arteries, often poorly maintained and susceptible to the relentless Andean elements, attempt to connect remote villages. Yet frequently, these modern roads fall short, leaving gaping holes in the network, especially in the most rugged, high-altitude regions. And it is precisely in these gaps that the ghost of the Inca commoner resurfaces. You're trekking through a cloud forest, a damp, verdant transition zone where the sheer rock face gives way to dense foliage and mist. Suddenly, the narrow, winding dirt path you've been following gives way to something else, a meticulously paved Inca road. Smooth, hand-fitted stones, still remarkably level, emerge from the undergrowth, a testament to enduring craftsmanship. This isn't a museum piece. It's a living thoroughfare. Ahead, you see a small group. An elderly campesino, his face weathered like the mountain itself, guides a string of llamas laden with sacks of potatoes and bundles of alpaca wool. His gait is unhurried, his steps falling naturally into the rhythm set by the ancient stones. Beside him walks a young woman, her phone clutched in her hand, dressed in a vibrant manta, balancing a wicker basket on her head. They are heading to the nearest market town, a journey of several hours, maybe even a full day. The modern gravel road, built a few decades ago by a government initiative, suffered a major landslide during the last rainy season and hasn't been repaired. For these communities, the Capac Nan isn't a relic. It's the lifeline. Further along, you encounter children, their laughter echoing through the valley, making their way to a small one-room schoolhouse nestled on a terraced hillside. For them, this ancient path is simply the way. It's the safest, most reliable route, bypassing treacherous modern shortcuts that erode easily or become impassable with the slightest downpour. You observe how their small feet instinctively find purchase on the perfectly angled stones, how they navigate the subtle curves and inclines designed for ease of passage, not speed. This isn't just a path. It's a piece of their heritage, a practical inheritance passed down through generations. This reliance on the ancient goes beyond mere convenience. It highlights a critical modern challenge: how to build infrastructure that truly serves and sustains remote communities. Today, large-scale projects often come with hefty price tags, external consultants, and materials ill-suited to the Andean environment. They are built for vehicles, for speed, often with little input from the local populations who will use them. When these roads inevitably degrade, or when a landslide takes out a section, the communities are left isolated, dependent on external aid that may or may not materialize. This is where the enduring lessons of the Inca commoners become not just historical curiosities, but blueprints for community-led development. The Inca system of Minca, or collective community labor, was the backbone of the Kapaknan's construction and maintenance. Everyone contributed, a few days a year, building and repairing sections of the road, bridging rivers, reinforcing terraces. It wasn't merely forced labor. It fostered a deep sense of ownership and collective responsibility. Imagine a community today, high in the Apurimac Canyon, facing a similar dilemma. Their single-access road, a narrow dirt track, has been washed out again. Instead of waiting indefinitely for distant government agencies, they revive the spirit of Minca. You witness it firsthand. Villagers, young and old, gather with picks, shovels, and crowbars. They are not attempting to rebuild a modern road for trucks, but to repair their section of the ancient Inca path that runs parallel, often just above the modern track. You see them selecting stones from the immediate vicinity, just as their ancestors did, understanding the geology, knowing which rock will endure the freeze-thaw cycles. They don't use concrete. They use interlocking, dry stone masonry, skills passed down orally, generation to generation. They meticulously clear water runoff channels, channeling mountain streams away from the path, a technique perfected by the Inca to prevent erosion. One elder, his eyes sharp and focused, directs the placement of each stone, explaining the principle of foundation, of interlocking strength, of building with the mountain, not against it. This is sustainable engineering in its purest form. The materials are local, minimizing transport costs and environmental footprint. The design is practical, built for the actual users, people and their pack animals, not heavy machinery. And, critically, it is community-driven. The people themselves are the architects, the engineers, the laborers, and the beneficiaries. They don't just build a road. They strengthen their social fabric, reinforcing bonds of reciprocity and shared destiny. This process is slow, painstaking, just as it was 5 centuries ago. But it fosters resilience. When the next heavy rains come, the patch of modern road might wash out again, but the community's repaired section of the Kapaknan will likely stand firm. It's a testament to a philosophy that prioritizes durability over speed, local knowledge over external expertise, and collective strength over individual profit. As you walk on, the ancient stones cool beneath your feet, carrying the imprint of countless journeys. You reflect on the enduring wisdom. The Inca commoners built not just roads, but systems of living. They understood that infrastructure isn't just about movement. It's about connection, community, sustenance, and the intergenerational transfer of practical knowledge. Their legacy isn't merely the surviving stonework, but the enduring spirit of adaptability, resilience, and collective ingenuity that still pulses in these mountains, a powerful echo reminding us that the answers to many modern challenges might lie not in soaring new technologies, but in the ground beneath our feet and the wisdom etched into the stones of those who walked before us.